time. So the whole intention behind today's coaching mastery skill session was that we've got to give our sellers and well, not so much landlords, because this is aimed at a seller, our sellers options. So you kind of know the drill. When you have a property for 6, 7, 8 months, you perhaps secure an offer or two, or get no offers in the 6 months or 7 months. Many show days, many buyers through the property, but really struggling to get an offer. You then have a couple of pricing adjustment conversations with the sellers face to face, and you just don't succeed on those. And then eventually, months and months later, let's use a scenario of asking 2.5 million rand, and you are then able, generally we get about 20-25% below asking price these days, if not more. And then you secure kind of an offer, let's say, of 2 million. So today is going to be a very practical mastery skill session. So please have your pen in hand, have some paper to write on. Stop me at any time when you don't understand what I'm saying, because this negotiating practical theoretical tool is one of the strongest tools that I'll teach you when the seller decides they think they're rather going to rent the property out because the offers are too low, and they'll take their chances in years to come. And 90% of the time, the figures show the seller that it's not an option to rent. And 100% of the time, the theoretical facts, the risks actually involved in renting out your property, is 100%, because you can't argue with facts. So I'm going to share that with you throughout the next 50 minutes. And I really want you to write them. For me, it's all in my head. It's imprinted. I've been doing this for 30-something years. And I just felt we're in that market where sellers maybe aren't in a rush. In Gauteng, stock is definitely scarce. I know it's different in the other regions. But in saying that, the offers are still not where the seller's expectation is. What a shock. And how do we bridge the gap? I'd like to also just say to all the rental agents that are online, it's no disrespect to you guys, because at the end of the day, sales supersede a rental. I mean, if you can do the sale versus a rental, we do the sale. But if we're unable to close using all the mastery skills that I'm about to share with you, and going through this practical theoretical exercise, then great, Jarvitz will get the lease. Fantastic, under the Jarvitz umbrella, and then we can hopefully sell the property in a year or 2 or 3. So I really want you to put your listening ears on. I want you to switch off your TVs at home and put your phones away. Let's turn mine upside down because it goes every second. And this is our time. I really want you to understand my thinking in this mastery journey this morning. It's done with your seller, with paper, with a pen. When you're at the stage of you've tried everything, you've shown them the comparative market analysis in the area. What does that mean? You've shown them all the houses that have sold within a 2-3 kilometer radius of theirs, showing them that the 2 million is not really weak and they shouldn't discard it. You've then shown them the competitive market analysis, which is stock that's on the market at the moment in competition to them. You've given them weekly, if not twice and 3 times a week, weekly feedback of what every buyer has said or a lack of buyers through the property, showing them the statistics from the portals, having these many face-to-face meetings over the period of like 6 and 7 months. So you've done your homework, you've shown them all the evidence, and you're now at that point where you just are struggling to close. So they often will you then sit with them and say, well, what are the options? So you've always got to give your sellers options, right? So we generally say, well, Joel, what are your options? So option number one, you can rent the property out, and then watch their body language. Watch how they would react to something like that, because often they'll nod their head, or if there's two parties involved, the one might nod, the one might shake. They give you nuances in their body language. So option number one, Joel, you could rent your property out, whatever they react. Two, you could just take it off the market for a period of time and hope for the best. Number three, what else could you do? Stay there, keep the property. And that's why today, if you have a look at the first slide, it's very much about selling versus renting versus keeping. So I want you to keep this understanding with me now. So let's look at a theoretical exercise. You say to the seller, is renting an option? And they go, it is. Then what you do is you take a piece of paper and you involve the client in a show and tell. It's very, very powerful. You take your pen. Yeah, here we go. I had about 10 the other day. There's one left. You take your pen, you take your paper, your professional paper, your Pinnacle letterheads, your Premier letterheads, the Jarvis letterhead. Please don't write on scrappy paper. And you say, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, or whoever it is, I need 10 minutes of your time, and I want to show you an exercise. And now what I'm showing you on the screen is what you are going to write. You create a column, selling versus renting. Just want to move my face away from here. It's in the way. And then there is a keeping as well. I just want to look up. If there's any questions at any time, please just post them and then I'll get to them. I just don't want to lose the train of thoughts. I saw London and I thought, who the hell do we have a London office? But it's Cheryl from East London. So welcome, and we are from Kempton Park. So let me explain this to you, and then you can put the questions in the group, but I'm not going to look. So Mr. and Mrs. Seller, let me show you. Let's do an example. We're sitting with an offer of 2 million Rand on your property. You don't want to take it. You feel you can get more, so you want to rent it out. Let's look at the selling versus renting option. Okay. So if you rent out your property, you'd probably get, and you come to an agreement with the seller, 16,000 Rand a month. So you now write in the column, they're going to now receive 16,000 Rand a month for their property. I've done an exercise where I'm doing it in their favor, in your favor, in their favor. There's a small bond of 300,000. That's what I've put in the exercise. So they've been in the house for 18 years or 15 years, and there's a 300,000 Rand bond left, let's just say for argument's sake, okay? So we write down renting, you're going to get an income rate of 16,000 Rand a month. Don't forget, though, you do have costs on the property, Mr. Seller, that is for your account. So every month, I've just used a round number. Let's say rates and taxes are about 2,000 Rand. So I've put that in brackets. All the liability, the cost to the seller, will be in brackets. So you bracket it. So it will be, what are your costs, Mr. or Mrs. Seller? There's rates and taxes, which is for your account. The tenant does pay for water and electricity. I've gone so frugal, Mr. Seller, Mrs. Seller. I'm giving you 500 Rand for insurance. I'm sure it's more, but you have to have the property insured. It's not the household content that you're insuring. It's the building and the structure. Should, God forbid, anything happen to the property, if the geyser bursts, if a lightning strike bolt comes and hits the gate or the pull motor, you need your insurance. I'm sure it's a lot more than 500 Rand. So you say to the seller, we're doing a very conservative exercise in your favor to show you number for number. If you rented out the property, this is what you're going to end up getting every single month. And if you sell the property and accept the offer of 2 million Rand, this is what you are going to get every single month. Obviously, if they take the money out of the country or buy something else, it's irrelevant. We are showing number for number what they achieve every month if they rent and what they achieve every month if they sell. There would be maintenance. You would have to put at least 1,000 Rand away. At least. I mean, that's nothing. That's 12,000 Rand a year. It costs a shitload more than 12,000 Rand a year to paint a house. It costs, the gate motor packs up. I've had my gate motor, my pool motor, and 3 leaks, and I've spent 37,000 Rand in the last month fixing my home with all these rains and the lightning and everything. So 1,000 Rand, if I was the owner of the house renting out my property, 1,000 Rand a month is not enough money. But again, Mr. Seller, Mrs. Seller, we're doing a very conservative exercise in your favor to show you why renting is not really an option. Then there would be about, on a 300,000 Rand bond, you'd have to pay a bond of 3,500 Rand a month. So you take your 16,000 Rand rental that you are receiving, you take off all your liabilities, which is 3,500, 4,500, 5,000, 7,000 worth of things that is for the seller's account. And at the end of the day, you are left with 9,000. I have been so conservative that I haven't even put in agent's commission because I'm not sure how you're going to find your own tenant privately, because good luck. You've got to do TPN reports. There's exit inspections, entry inspections. It's so complicated. There's so much to do. I haven't even put in the commission at the end of the day to show you how this exercise is not in your favor to rent out the property. That's how overcautious and conservative I've been in your favor. Just let me know you're all following me. And it seems simple, which is great. You have to have this ability to sit with them, write out the table, put it all down and show them. Rent out your property at the moment, you will net 9,000 Rand a month. Let me just see if there's any questions. Any questions, please put them in the group. Pretty self-explanatory. Fantastic. We've got the offer of 2 million Rand on the table. Okay. Let's say we give them a crack calm of 5%. I just want to work out a round number. It makes it easier. I would hope you would fight for more, because remember, 5 plus VAT is what discount? Put in the chat. There's a virtual chocolate coming your way. If you are giving your sellers 5 plus VAT, I want to know what percentage discount are you giving them. Let's see who the first person is that can get the answer right. Please don't all shout at once. So it's a 33% discount. Team Tigerberg, well done. You need to know these things either off by rote in your head, or have a list and put it in your diary or your file or on your phone or on a computer. Because guys, it is vital, and I am digressing on this just for a minute because a lot of you got it wrong. You've got to be talking the language as follows. You are adjusting your price by 20%, yet you expect us to give you a 33% discount. That is the language and the lingo at Javits Properties. That's how we speak. We don't speak in 10,000 rands and 20,000 rand discounts. We speak in percentages. So we're giving you a 33% discount. So brokerage and VAT would be 115,000 rand. That would come off your cost of 2 million rand. Would have to take off the bond of 300,000 rand that you owe the bank. So that's also a liability in brackets, an expense to them. Again, I've kept it very, very simple. I haven't put in tax of what they would have to pay on the selling side, haven't put tax in on the rental, just kept it even keeled. And remember, there is a brokerage for rental. So if you want to add it into the exercise, you should. And that's generally about a month's rent. So they're still paying another 16K. If we take 16,000 Rand and we divide that into a year, so you can add on another expense of 1,333 in this column. Guys, when I use the arrow, can you actually see it on the presentation? So I'm moving the arrow here. Can you actually see where I'm putting it underneath the 3.5 less bond repayment? Just tell me. I just want to see if you can see that arrow. Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much. So you can add in there 1,333 Rand, and you can put the brokerage for a rental. Good luck to rent out your own property. It is very, very intense. And when the geyser bursts, and you should convince them to use the management side as well, which is an extra cost. But when they're living away, or the geyser bursts, or the roof collapses, or the tenant hasn't paid their rent, who they're going to now going to go to an attorney who's going to charge them an untold fortune per hour to rectify the issue. Because once that tenant's in, good luck in getting them out. That is what you actually pay us. So I really feel we should add in that brokerage of just a normal rental, and then even the management fee, should you convince them, because it's really, really a big responsibility to rent out your home. Getting back to the selling, you've got a 2 million Rand offer on the table. Brokerage and VAT is 115,000, less your other expense of your bond of 300,000 Rand, leaves you with 1,585,000. So what I'm trying to ascertain here for all of you to understand is to keep this very simple, smart, okay? So if they rent out the property as per that, they're going to come out even less than 9K. They're going to come out with about 7-ish. But let's leave it at 9 for in their favor. Selling, you now have 1,580,000 Rand in your bank account. Okay, it doesn't matter what you're doing with it. I want to get a month per month for rental. I want to get a per month for sale. Are you with me? I worked on what could you get today, about 8%. You take that 1,585K and you invest that money at 8% per annum. Okay, you with me? It yields a return every month of interest of 10,566 Rand per month. So if you rent out your property, you're going to get in the 7s every month. Yes, you've still got your property, and we'll look shortly, is it good or bad that they've still got their property. If you sell your property, you put it in the bank, you're going to get 10,566. So logically, who would rent out a property? Because we haven't even looked at the risks, which we're going to look at right now in this mastery session, of there are so many risks involved that we know, but do we deliver that message eloquently and clearly to the seller? I don't know, and I'm not convinced. So I'm going to do it with you, and you've got to write it down. You will get, we do have outcomes that will be sent to you, but I want you to take this all in and write it for yourselves. So number one, we're sitting very pretty. I've got news for you. Take out the bond. It still works in their favor to sell. And even frankly, if they get an extra 1,000 Rand a month on the rental side, the risks totally outweigh 1,000 or 2,000 Rand more. But here it so happens, as 80% of your exercises will work in the favor, that the selling per month money that they can pocket and earn interest is generally higher than the rental amount. So you're sitting with them, you're writing this all down, keeping it very simple, smart, and the numbers speak for itself. We then now go into the risks, and there are just so many risks, and then we'll look at the keeping as well if they want to just stay there. You know, keep on reminding them all the time, why are you actually selling? If it's financial trouble, which a lot of people have, finance issues, this is a reason they need to sell it. If they're immigrating, it's even more of a reason to sell it because you can bring in the exchange rate. So when we talk about one of the risks of market volatility, it's market volatility, i.e. the fluctuation of the rand. You know, it's such a fluctuation from 18.5 to 19.5 to 19 to 18.7. I mean, whoever thought we would get to the 19s? It's going to eventually get into the 20s. I'll never forget, we had a client in Glen Hazel who were immigrating to the UK. I think it was about 12, 14 years ago, where the pound was 14 to 1. And they also wanted to rent it out. And we did this exercise, which was so powerful. But we were so big on this market volatility and the fluctuation of the rand. And we said to them, what happens if it hits 18 and 19? And it said, never. It will never hit levels of 18 and 19 to the pound. And we went, really, you think? Why are you actually immigrating? And that's a powerful question in your negotiations to ask your sellers, especially the ones that are immigrating, if they have such confidence in the country, then why aren't they staying? They can't rave about the country if they're immigrating, and you need to probe. And you need to say, why are you actually leaving? And often they'll say, well, this is what our clients have said to us in the last couple of years. They don't see a future in South Africa. There's no future for their children. I got retrenched. I can't find a job. And we're nervous of the crime, etc. There's 50 million reasons. And milk it. You know, the ones that are going don't have faith. Otherwise, they would stay. So they can't argue with that. So there's the risk of renting is the market volatility. It's the fluctuation of the property market. Where are we going to be with this new? I'm not a political oak, but I know briefly this, it's called AGOA, that's happening in America with Trump in South Africa. He's not a fan of us. And it's to do with the import taxes. If he brings in this AGOA story, it's going to hit our economy big time. I'm not saying this to make you all nervous and anxious. It's a reality, but there's always a seller and there's always a buyer. There's always a landlord. There's always a lessee. But these are facts you can use right now in your negotiations, whether it's renting versus selling versus keeping, or just explaining the general volatility, excuse me, of the property market. Yes, sentiment is definitely higher. Yes, there are lots more buyers entering the marketplace, but there's also this AGOA thing, which, if it does come into being, is going to create a fortune of unemployment in South Africa. And there's talk now, I saw this morning on the news, that they want to make VAT an extra 2%, and the DA are fighting the ANC on that. I mean, it would be a disaster if that went to 17% for so many reasons. Let me just look here. I just want to see, yeah. So Cindy, please go back. Yeah, and of course, I'll go back and I'll carry on talking about the risks. Absolutely no problem. There we go. Take a photo, guys, and then you can write from it. So, you know, we're talking about this volatility of a market. There's interest rates are uncertain. The rand is weak. The political situation is always in mid-air. We've got this AGOA story happening at the moment. So you want to take your chances, and in a year or two, you might get 1.7 or 1.8. So that's very, very much. I have to move on now. So just take a photo, guys. Let me just check quickly if there's any other questions. Okay, perfect. So the volatility, the uncertainty, the political climate, the economic climate, the financial climate. I think we're one of the top in unemployment, and is it getting any better? I certainly don't see it. So you are taking a massive risk in renting out your property and calling us in a year or two, because I can't tell you where the market's going to be in a year or two. The second risk is finding a suitable tenant. So when I say to you now, finding a suitable tenant, the only thing you're probably going to think of as a seller would perhaps think of is a suitable tenant that will pay on time and that will look after the home. But that's massive, because let's play the movie to the end, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. So you put a tenant in now, and let's just see Team Tigerberg. AGOA has been around for a number of years. The big question is, will Trump pull the plug on Africa? And I think we'll know by September. Exactly. This is real. And you need to milk it. It is what it is. Use the negativity. We didn't create it. We don't want it to happen. But if it happens, it can't be good for our country at the end of the day. So use it. Finding a suitable tenant. A suitable tenant is as follows: someone who pays on time. So now your tenant doesn't pay on time, and you now have a bond of 3.5 grand to pay, rates and taxes of 2 grand to pay, insurance to pay, maintenance to pay, so you don't have your rent. Possession is 9/10 of the law. So good luck in getting your tenant out the property. You got to go through a whole legal rigmarole that's going to cost you more money. And when they don't pay, I don't know what you're going to do. So suitable tenant is A, a tenant who pays on time. B, a suitable tenant is a tenant who looks after your property the way you have beautifully looked after it now. That's if they have, obviously. If they haven't, you can't. You know, if the gutters are falling down, the fascia boards are falling down, it's leaking, they're going to have to spend money to find a suitable tenant, because no one's going to rent their property in the disarray that the house is in. Are you with me? So then moving on with suitable tenant, we deal with them all the time. We want a show day and they go, no, little Johnny's writing exams, it doesn't suit us, or we're not going out on a Sunday, or you can't come at 5 o'clock and you can't come at 12 o'clock. They block us. You as a seller, it's been such a pleasure working with you. You've been so open, so amicable. Whenever we want you to bring buyers through, you've always allowed us in. Well, we can't put a gun to the tenant's head. Yes, it will be written in the lease at all reasonable times, but they block you. That is my experience of 34 years, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, or whoever you are. We struggle and we can't get access. Goes one step further. What happens if the house is in a shambles? When we bring people, you've always made such an effort and you've always tidied up your property. They could have toys lying around. We had a case recently, I mean, it's despicable, where there were used tampons lying on the floor. No exaggeration. The curtains were closed. The toilet bathroom smelt. It was grime in the kitchen. I mean, no one's going to buy a home like that. The tenants don't care. They're probably very happy in the property and don't really want to move. When you are ready to sell, they are going to block us. They are going to run down your home to the buyer and saying, it's very cold, it's very dark, it's very noisy, don't buy it. We can't stop that. So that is a monstrous risk that you are taking if you don't have that suitable tenant. And just one step forward is that if they furnish it undesirably and they stick big couches in front of your beautiful French doors that open out onto your garden, we cannot move their furniture around. We're not allowed to touch anything. You know, I'll share a story with all of you, and it's a true story, and I share it with a lot of my clients. So when I was married to Jody and we had a cute little house in Sandringham, we moved to Glen Hazel and we couldn't sell Sandringham. We just couldn't even get any offer, so we had to rent it. We didn't have a choice. And I knew this guy from the community and he seemed like a respectable guy, and was only him and his wife and one kid, so how much damage could have been done? Well, if I tell you after 3 months, no rent came in, didn't return my calls, went to the house that had actually absconded and left the country, and the house was empty. The pool was like a swamp. In those days, excuse me, I think it was 1998-ish. I think the pool cost then about $5,000 to fix. Can you imagine how much money that was? The garden, our prize garden was like a jungle. We also had to spend another $7,000 getting people in, and other things were stolen. I mean, we had all the mezuzahs, which is the Jewish scroll, on the door, and they were worth about 20,000 Rand that we got as wedding presents, and those were gone. And it just was such an awful experience that I swore I would never, ever rent out any of my properties. And I never have. And again, rental people, don't take this personally. At the end of the day, as we say, sales supersede rentals. If we can't close on this, as I mentioned earlier, you'll get the property to rent. Fantastic. But sales supersede it, and sellers need to know. You have to protect yourself and warn them, these are the risks if you choose to rent out your property. Just trying to go up to see the chats, if there's anyone else. Trump wants to cancel South Africa's access. I know. So yeah. So it is something to really, really use. Guys, are you embracing and understanding the risks for the owner if they choose to rent out their property? Going back to that numbers slide again, just to, again, 9,000 Rand, which is actually less because we're going to put the brokerage in there, versus 10.5 is a no-brainer to sell. The volatile fluctuation of the property market, the fluctuation, just to repeat, of the Rand, the suitable tenant, which has so many branches and so many arms. And then we don't think about this to tell our clients, is the capital gains tax implication. Because what actually happens now, and you can check this out with the attorneys, is that they now rent out their property. It's no longer their primary residence. It's now deemed, I would imagine, to be an investment property. So when they do sell in a year or 2 or 3, they cannot lie to the receiver of revenue and put that property as their domicilian, because they are no longer living there. So I would imagine that there might be a capital gains tax implication because it's no longer their primary residence. Do we even think of this? I think not. And that is such a waste of money. You know, I don't know the exact, when it comes to capital gains tax, I'm not the expert. So I say to the client, speak to your auditor, speak to your accountant. But just as a rough kind of calculation, it could be anywhere between 10 and 25% on profit made. So if they've been there 15, 16 years and bought the property, let's say for R1,000,000 or 800,000 Rand, there's capital gains tax on R1,000,000 odd, obviously less brokerage. I'm just making a hypothetical scenario. So they're going to be throwing away another 10 to 25 to 35 to 45,000 Rand. Yeah, Glenn, about 18%. So that's why I said anywhere between 10 and 25. Just depends also on the tax bracket. As I said, I'm not an expert, so I don't want to give you the wrong information. But as Glenn Goldberg said, it is about 18%. So again, all of this that they're losing, they're now going to have to get an offer of more than 2 million Rand in a year or 2 or 3. Is this making sense to you? Are you understanding it? Because it's one thing to also understand. Yeah, so Annette, what I thank you for saying that, because what I did say earlier is I'm leaving the tax out because they were correct, because they would have to pay tax on the rental, but I think there's also tax on investment. So I kind of wanted to even keel it, but you can milk it, Annette, very brilliant. You can milk it that you do also have to pay tax. The receiver doesn't let you get away with anything. It's one of the most efficient bodies we have at the moment, which is not a bad thing. So giving you, and as I said, will be more in detail on the outcome sheet here that we've got prepared for you. So we've got our outcome sheet showing it exactly with the exercise that I've shown you now, at the back, and then giving you what the volatility is, what the finding a suitable tenant is, and the capital gains tax implication. So it's all going to be there, but I just wanted you to also write it and experience how you would do this negotiation with your sellers. Thanks for that, Annette. If you sell the property, it's risk-free. So you sell the property, here are the keys, c'est la vie, ciao, ciao, have a nice life, 1,500,000, whatever thousand rand sitting in my bank account, and Bob's your uncle. So rent it out. These are all your risks. Selling it risk-free, off your head, you can move forward to your new venture. And if they do decide to stay, I want you to remind them what the property is actually costing them. So this is your bond that you are paying every month. And you write it with them, you involve them, you make them write it. Introverts love this. Introverts are turned on by numbers and facts and figures. You might lose a bit of an ADHD extrovert, but you still write it and show them. It's a show and tell. It's spending your time flaunting your knowledge, basically. There's a maid, a housekeeper, there's a gardener, there's a pool service, a pool to maintain if there is. There's an alarm, there's water and electricity. So yes, they're going to say, but Joel, wherever I move, I'm going to have to pay water and light. And you go, yeah, but you're selling a big house to go into a smaller apartment. Your water and lights are going to be much less than you're paying at the moment. So I'm doing this exercise to show you, if you keep your property, nothing's changed. This is what you're in for every month. And it kind of alarms them and unnerves them to say, well, that's the reason why I'm selling. I can't be in for all these costs, insurance. And again, I've left out their maintenance. Things break all the time. You don't have to tell you. For those of you who live in properties, you know what goes wrong. And it ends up to be a fortune. I didn't even tell you our sewage also we had to sort out and have that unblocked. And it just doesn't stop. And then you put the number in there. So you're not going to take the offer. You're not going to sell it. You're going to keep it. You're paying X amounts a month. Are you comfortable to continue like that for the next year or two? Because these are your options. Keep it, take it off the market and stay there, sell it, which I've shown you all the possible risks and the numbers, or rent out the property, and these are the numbers, and these are the risks. So I've really put a detailed session into 45 minutes for all of you. I want to just go to the chat bar, and I need you to ask me questions or tell me if you found it beneficial, because it's a really powerful tool to use when your seller is all nonchalant. I'm not in a rush. And they go, well, what are you going to do? I'll just rent it out. I love it when they say that. If I'm unable to close, as I mentioned before, on this powerful mastery skill set of renting versus selling versus keeping, then I'm going to put them onto our rental agent. But at the end of the day, there will not be a comeback to us when the tenant doesn't pay on time, when the tenant destroys the property, when they're ready to sell in 2-3 years' time and we cannot gain access. We've covered ourselves. We've shared our mastery skills and knowledge with the sellers that there's just no comeback. But it works very, very powerfully when you sit with your paper and your pen and you ask them if they've got the time, because you need to show them. What's more powerful is, I know this by rote because I've been training this and doing this for 34 years. It's quite powerful if you can learn it off by heart, because then what you're doing is you're just writing and this knowledge is just coming, and that's called credibility. So when you show credibility, I'll come to that now, Anthony. When you show credibility, people trust you. When people trust you, they take your hand, and wherever you lead them, they will walk with you. So, Anthony, when we say the market volatility, the market is very, very volatile. So bringing in this potential AGOA situation with America, read up on it if you don't know what it is. Interest rates are coming down slowly, but not big enough. So it hasn't made such a dent in the affordability for the buyer. The country is kind of very, it is erratic. It's erratic. We don't know what's going on. I don't know. South Africa is a very volatile country, as is America and Canada and many other countries across the world. But it's that volatile fluctuation of the property market. There's no major growth. There's hardly any growth in the last 2 years. It's minuscule. If you read all the FNB barometers and the reports, it's minuscule. So there's a volatility. People speak about us overseas. We don't have a fantastic reputation generally. Thank God we're not in junk status. But at the end of the day, we were taking a 5.5 million rand offer from a 10 million rand buyer a week ago. And he said to me, and a goer actually came up. He said, if this offer was in December, we would have given you the offer. He said, I'm in commercial property. I've been in it for 22 years. I am very worried about the property market. My wife and I are uncertain if we actually want to invest at this present moment. We'd like to maybe even offload our primary residence and rents because we want to see what's going to go on. We think the property market's going to crash. And that's from a very educated property guy. I hope he's wrong, but it is what it is. So these are the facts. It's very much a spiraling roller coaster. Come on, let's look at our country. It's very 1 week, it changes all the time with government. I don't want to run anyone down or make it too political, whatever, but it's a reality. You ask the rest of the world and we've spoken about. So it's very much, and look at the volatility in the sense of how 6 months ago, we had 25 properties on our book. So I'm talking for Lorena, Net, and I. We had 35 properties in our book. Now we're scrounging with 11, trying to get to 15 and 18 because there's just such limited stock. That's a fluctuation of a property market. I would define that as a volatility. It's so volatile. I don't know what's going on. Does that kind of answer your question, Anthony? Let me know. And then Eskil, if one keeps the property and tries to sell in 2 years' time, exactly, the price must be adjusted even higher due to the value of money, which I alluded a little bit to, is that you're going to then have to get more correct on what you've actually lost, A, and B, we don't know where the market's going to be in 2 years' time. You could be getting an offer of 1.5. If you're a gambler, as Kenny Rogers says, take it. There's only 4 aces in the pack. There's not 5 and 6 and 7. You don't get 9 lives. So you're going to use up your chances. It's a hell of a risk. So really, if the extra bit of money that you're hoping to get, this overrides it. It's logical. The numbers and the facts, the theory and the practical speak for themselves. And just again, to repeat, Eskil, it's the value of money, and I call it opportunity lost and opportunity cost. That sums it up in a nutshell. You can start the music. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for your time. I wish you well. I wish you courage to graft hard like you've never worked harder before. Sit with your sellers, give them the evidence, speak to them, show them what's going on in the market, because there is business to be done, despite all the negativity that is out there. And I'm not sure if Hazel is here. Don't stress. Guys, have a fantastic week. Stay warm, stay safe. Coming up to the end of the financial year, you've got about 10 days left. If you're close to Pinnacle, if you're close to Premier, smash it. You can do this. And until next time from me, signing out. Ciao, ciao.